Alive and well today, going good.
Okay, tell me about the SBA, how that got started and your involvement.
Well, Mickey Walker is a pertinent name here. Mickey was a modeler of long-standing in near Marietta. He lived in Smyrna, which is 5 miles from Marietta, and we were acquainted and pretty good friends back in the earliest days when I had the store and so forth. And in fact, Mickey flew, or didn't fly, brought to this place the first RC airplane I had ever seen. And he brought it to this pasture where I lived, nearly where I lived, and was going to fly it. He and another guy came and had airplanes, and I went out there on a Saturday and watched them all day, tune their radios and fiddle with the engines and do this and that. They never got off the ground. I said, so this is RC. But I was fascinated with it, and that's where I got my impetus to dig into those days where you had to make all your RC equipment. We'd been making the airplanes, but in those days you had to make the transmitter, you had to make the receiver, you had to make the servos, you had to wire them all together, you had to make plugs to wire them all together, and you had to balance the airplanes with all that equipment, and then you had to tune that radio and receiver to work together, which was certainly an art in those days. It wasn't easy.
And that radio equipment was pretty heavy too, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. Well, that Bramco stick box that I mentioned a little while ago was at least 10 pounds of the transmitter. It was a ground-based transmitter, a big square box, about a foot square. It had a big strap handle to pick it up. It was so heavy, and an 8-foot antenna. The frequencies in those days to have a cut length of the antenna right to make them the strongest you could was 8 feet long. So it was a collapsible antenna, and you'd go out there and set the thing down and stretch it out, and then get all. You had about 3 or 4 different voltages of batteries and packs and bunches in the transmitter and then the receivers to get all the different voltages you need for tubes. And
An 8-foot antenna would be pretty low frequency tue. They weren't probably up in the megahertz like they are now.
I never paid too much attention to frequencies, so I don't know. Yeah,
they would be kilohertz at 8 foot.
Maybe so. I just don't remember, Roy. Okay, but anyhow, the work to get into RC at that time certainly was not simple. A kid, like we try to get kids in today, kid couldn't begin to get in it. You had to have a lot of knowledge and a lot of time and a lot of money for those days. My first big RC, real RC airplane that I had, after I was on a trip to New York and saw a bunch of them flying up there. They were ahead of Georgia a good bit by a year or so. And I saw this airplane. I talked to the guy and talked to him to sell it to me. I paid $600 for the airplane and all the equipment ready to fly, and that big Bramco transmitter, and carried all that home in a Jetstar back to Georgia and flew it. It was really wonderful. It got me going, but then I got to learn by looking at it and examining it. You can take it apart, look at details, so you figure out how to do it yourself. So that was a smog hog. It was a good high wing airplane. Flew good.
Tell them about Mickey and how you got the SBA going.
I got off the track, didn't I? Yeah, Mickey was the one he thought up the desire to maintain the old time airplanes in the about 1985, 1990. And we went back. We first specified 1965 and older, and then finally went up to 1970. So we're trying to hold the old airplanes. So Mickey thought of that and got a bunch of us, I believe 5 or 6 of us, in the Marietta area together and decided we'd make a club. And Mickey thought up the SBA name and everything and wrote up the rules, and he started the whole thing. He was Mr. SBA and still is this very moment. And so we all.
What year would this be?
What?
What year was that?
That was, I think we actually made this formation probably in either 89 or 90. I can't be sure which one, but one or the other. And got the SBA going and probably got up to around 150 members in a couple of years. All people all around the South, but it never has spread beyond the South. It spread to Alabama and over to Mississippi and maybe to Texas a little bit, but there's another outfit called Vintage Aircraft Association up in New York, I believe Pennsylvania maybe, that does the same thing. They got a different attitude to it, different set of rules, but it's basically the same thing. Keep the old airplanes flying. So a lot of people, I expect they got more members than we have because they got a lot more per town up there. But anyhow, those two organizations try to keep the old RC airplanes flying. And Mickey invented the SPA, and a few of us joined in. Then we set up the pattern contest and had them all around Georgia. I think we ended up having usually about 7 every year. And they had to be, like there was one in Birmingham, one in Americus, Georgia, and one in Greenville, South Carolina. I can't remember all the places, but just locally, so to speak, in the southeast.
What were the rules for to qualify to be in a SPA and be in a contest? Was there age limits and stuff?
To be in the SPA, no person limit of age. Anybody could get in it, but we had 3 different categories of competition. We had senior and super senior, and I've forgotten, I think it was called intermediate, was the lower, younger group.
So the seniors would be what, like over a certain age?
I believe seniors went to 65,
Okay.
and from 45 to 65, and super seniors were 65 and over.
Oh, okay.
I've always been in the super senior group. But anybody could join, just get in one of those groups. The idea was to try to keep the competition really even, equal, so to speak, so anybody had a chance, you might say.
Did you win any of those?
Oh yeah, well, some. Not a lot. I did not frequently win first, although I did once in a while.
Yeah.
But anyhow, we're talking about Mickey. Mickey won a good bit, but he's like me. He never did spend the time to try to be the best. He just enjoyed it, and he designed a lot of airplanes. Enjoyed that. He has always been the helper. He's not the president of the SPA today. He's I forgot, president emeritus, I think I call it, something like that. But he's there. He lives in Ackworth, I believe, last time I heard from him. And he's a mighty fine fellow. Mickey is also a full-size pilot. He flew Cubs right after World War II. He wasn't in the war. He wasn't old enough, and he got his license in 46 or 7, and flew at our local airport in Marietta called Cobb International. Flew out there for a while. He didn't stay there very long. Mickey had a machine shop, was his business, and was very good at conditioning and maintaining RC engines. So everybody turned to him for help if their engine wasn't running well, that sort of thing.
So let's see, why don't you tell me about some of your favorite planes?
RC planes?
Yeah. Did you ever get into scale? Or were you mostly pattern?
I built quite a few scale airplanes, but I never really got carried away with it. Just too demanding, and scale airplanes do not fly that well, generally speaking.
Do any come to your mind as, boy, I really like that one, or whatever?
Well, what I built was down my military line, likely built an F6 and an F8, and I built a Ryan STA. That's about all the big 60-inch span scale airplanes I built, but I built a lot of smaller ones, a lot of small kits. I built a lot of small scale kits, but didn't try very hard to put pilots on or anything, just look-alike airplanes. The scale thing has always appealed to everybody, including me, but in RC, it was so much more obvious that the pattern-type airplanes flew better and were more graceful and smooth flying in the air that I just couldn't stay with the scale airplanes. Went to a scale airplane contest down in Miami one time and thought I was going to see something wonderful. And I did see 2 things. One of them was wonderful and one was miserable. The wonderful thing was the appearance. All these scale airplanes had details that you just wouldn't believe that people could work out and make out of little things, make scale-looking things. I remember one guy looked in the wheel well. He had an ME-109. I looked at his wheel well, and he had all the hydraulic lines and the girder work and formed work of the metal. Every little detail of that wheel well. If you took a picture of it, you absolutely could not tell the difference between that wheel well and a real one.
Wow. Even
in the wheel well. So that's the kind of work they do. The bad thing there was that they were all miserable flyers at that contest. That was pretty early on. That was in the 90s sometime, and it was a big contest. But the there were a few people that were the airplane was safe when they were flying them, but most of them, the normal thing where it was crash and fix and crash and fix and crash and fix. Even when they got in the air, they'd crash right away before there was time to land. Even they just spent all their time building those airplanes and wouldn't take a few minutes to learn to fly. So it's kind of disappointing, but there's one other reason for I didn't feel like getting in scale. Wasn't much competition in the flying, and the building was, of course, a totally different thing.
Yeah.
Took a lot of skill. And it's very, very wonderful to see those really nice scale airplanes, but if I put that much time in one, I sure wouldn't fly it. They all had to say, you know, if I say I'm going to try to take off and it crashes.
Yeah.
All that work, sometimes a couple of 3 years to build a scale airplane. But I just couldn't see wasting that much good work by flying it, so I couldn't fly the scale airplanes in competition.
What you told me one time, this is kind of, I don't know if this should be on the video or not, but you said after you moved out here that the people are a lot different here, and that trying to run a club is different than it is trying to run a club back there.
Yeah, I don't remember all my thinking about that, but I certainly remember saying that and feeling that way.
Yeah.
And I still feel that way. My explanation is that the Western, Northwestern, if you want to call it that, people are just generally more independent and therefore harder to lead. And they don't like to join clubs and things like that near much. In Atlanta or Marietta, all you had to say was club, and boy, there would be 100 people on you right away. They love getting clubs and cooperate and work together. People out here don't do that. The ones I've run into, certainly in the modeling field.
You had plenty of people willing to be officers and sponsor events and stuff like
work
that.
in the club, so forth. And the people here are independent again. They'll even if they join the club and will fly the RC airplanes, they're not going to be the president. They're not going to organize a contest or try to help other people to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. They'll follow the leader, but they won't take the lead, even though they're independent. That's a little contrary, it seems like, but that's the way it looks to me. I don't mean to be critical by that. That's perfectly okay. Everybody be their own person, but it just makes forming a club here very hard, and it's hard to get it organized and active in doing things. But the people here are just fine. There's nothing wrong with them in general. That's just the view of our club thing in our city. It makes me take that view.
Yeah.
I remember pretty clear my old thinking about growing up in the South and then growing in the military and being sent up to New England and living up there for a winter and a summer, and finding all the people in New England, particularly in Massachusetts, which is reputed to be one of the worst in terms of the typical New Englander, were, to my opinion, much more friendly and much nicer to get along with people than the people in the South, in Georgia. The reputation of the South is about very polite and all that, you know. Mm-hmm. Well, they are, but it's all relative. And the people in New England want you to just know who they are and speak to them and know what's going on. I thought they were much easier to get along with. Uh-huh. I like to find. So, of course, it's a matter of how you like people, I guess. But I conclude that nowhere in the world is anything wrong with people. It's just the leadership they get sometimes.
Yeah.